Thank you so much, Mark and Narada, for setting the scene. I think, as we've heard from so many experienced speakers throughout these 2 days, it is no surprise that we'll be delving a little bit deeper and hearing from a very experienced panelist, and I shall introduce them in sequential order. So first of all, we have Emily Batt. She is the Sustainability Manager of Brown's Dairy. And can I say that's such a lovely job title. So can I please invite her on stage and joining us as one of our first panelists? Second, we have Michael Dosser, who is the Group General Manager of Result Group. And can I please invite you on stage as well? And David Kilpatrick, who is the RDQI Director of ZipForm Packaging. Can I please invite you on stage as well? And we might just take the steps, and feel free to join us. And Ian Batt, the founder and winemaker of Small Things Wine. And I would like to invite you on the stage as our panelists. So this is our illustrious panel, and please feel free to sit in any order. And can we please give them a round of applause? Thank you. So this is actually an interesting panel because the first thing, if I would like to give you an overview of the design of this panel, we actually have two packaging, I would say, suppliers. In this case, their clients are essentially business owners. Whereas on the other hand, we have Emily and Ian really representing the voices of business owners. So let me just kickstart this panel by probably inviting them in this order, to probably introduce a little bit about their business and also the sustainable packaging journey, please. Over to you, Emily.
Hi, so Emily Batt, Sustainability Manager at Brown's Dairy. So hopefully most people from WA understand a little bit about Brown's Dairy. We were established in 1886 in what was originally just a single farm in what is now Shenton Park. By Edward Brown. So for the last 136 years or so, we've been supplying local families with, locally produced WA milk. And really the transition more recently has been around making sure that those consumers are now still able to get these products in the nutritional format that they need, but really around absorbing some of those concerns around packaging and environment and making sure we have a whole package for them. The last sort of 12 months has been super exciting for Brown's. We've seen us absorb ESG into our one of our key pillars that really underpins a lot of the decisions that we make. So that's been a really, really exciting time. And I'll talk to you a little bit more, probably of some of the questions on the panel. But it really helps make sure we have some certain sort of questions we ask ourselves with every business decision that we make. And it addresses a lot of the topics that we've already talked about over the last couple of days. So around our emissions, around food waste, product waste, and around our packaging.
Thank you very much, Emily. And Michael, would you like to share a little bit?
Yeah, so Michael Dosser, General Manager, Result Group. Company started 13 years ago. Self-confessed packaging nerd, without a doubt.
That's not just me then.
But yeah, look, you'd describe us as a packaging technology company. I think we'd like to be seen as, and that's what we try to be seen as. We operate under 4 business units, some traditional stuff, product identification, so coding and marking systems, labelling systems, and those sorts of things. Coding and markings and where the evolution of that is going is becoming more and more sustainable by the day, and very much so around the self-adhesive materials as well, which is a second division that we operate. So we sell self-adhesive materials into the label printing industry. So one of the few companies in the world actually that work in both spaces around the materials. And we don't sell labels, we support the label printing industry, but we work with the machinery. And that gives us a really strong understanding of that process. We also delve into RFID and NFC, which is a rapidly growing area in that business unit. And the last, I guess, product in that mix is what we call functional labels. Some of the things that you were looking at yesterday, Min. Labels that tell us what a product's journey is, labels that tell us what's happening to a product through that life cycle. And that's a space that really excites and tells us what's going on and can go hand in hand with a number of other technologies. Third one is process automation. So we're very much taking a market leadership space around traceability. And traceability is a big word that sometimes scares a lot of people, and we're trying very hard to demystify that. That's a very important mandate. There's one more business unit that we operate under, and I just no. And the last one is value-added packaging. And value-added packaging is where we operate a number of niche products, and those the most important one that I guess is linked to sustainability is the reclose systems. That is somewhere where we believe we can make a significant difference around the food waste in the home, and making packaging functional. That's us. I'm a Liberal and I like long walks on the beach.
Thanks, Michael.
I'm a Liberal too. We can meet afterwards. Thanks, Min. Ian Batt, founder and winemaker for Small Things Wine. Small by name, small by nature. I've taken the liberty of bringing some product because I think 90% of the customers we encounter have never seen wine in can before. As a category, it's underrepresented and ill-defined. So Small Things Wine is a premium wine brand out of WA. We're the only premium wine can brand in Australia and the only one in WA. So we've been the beneficiary of DPIRD and Austrade and other government departments to try and help us innovate in an industry that's has taken on innovation. You know, we're the early adopters of screw cap. We're the inventors of bag in box. So, you know, Aussie wine drinkers aren't afraid to experiment. They just happen to be particularly slow in wine and can. I think that's come off the back of probably pretty poor product, high margin, high volume business controlled by much bigger conglomerates than us. So what we talk about is provenance, sustainability, quality, and our vineyards and our winery are all sustainably accredited. Yeah. We're in the process now of going through the only sustainability accreditation in Australia called Sustainable Wine Growing Australia, and that will accredit us as a brand. So we've got 3 tiers of accreditation as a result. We try and advocate the fact that you can get just good booze in a can that's more sustainable, and I won't go into all the other details because I think that will come out, but that's us in a nutshell, I think.
Thanks, Ian. And over to you, David.
Yeah, sure. So as a company, our sustainable packaging journey started back in 2010, so I didn't realise we're about the same age as you for your business, Michael. That's interesting. And it really joined 2 kind of passions of mine and my partners in a fascination with forestry environments and the ability to transform cellulose from forest sources into amazing products. And packaging, food and beverage packaging, is certainly one of the most important categories of those amazing products. But, you know, we see them all around us in terms of structural timber, and you know, there's just so many applications for this incredible natural product. And we focused in particular on functional fibre. That's what we deliver, we bring to the market for our customers and the brands that we interface with. And just a couple of key points out of that. So we use either FSC virgin paper or post-consumer recycled content in our packs. We provide barriers, so whatever functional requirements there are for preservation of the product and reduction of food waste, we can meet those requirements. The packs are incredibly light and strong, capable of incredible decoration, so the full range of print and other decoration technologies, including laser etching. We can offer non-round shapes. We can offer a range of closure options, and that range is extending as we speak. And importantly, we had some clarification around our pack as in terms of the APCO guidance for brands, and we are able to confirm that our packs are curbside recyclable according to the application of the prep tool and the understanding that APCO now has of the process of separating the fibre. So it's all about how you can get a clean recovery of fibre from the recycling of the packaging, and we were able to achieve all of the benchmarks, in fact exceeded the benchmarks that are required in order for the packs to go into the fibre stream for recovery. And obviously fibre packaging is really the engine of the recovery process, waste recovery of packaging in Australia, because the recycling rates are so high and we have good scale in that category. We're working hard on innovation, and we have in the pipeline a number of exciting new developments. In 2024, we expect our fibre content to go above 95%. We're currently at about 91%, and our post-consumer recycled content to go from 60 to 65% to 65 to 70%. So we're certainly not resting on our laurels. We're working hard to present new options and improve the performance of our packaging in terms of circularity.
Thank you. Thanks, David. And perhaps this other question I'd like to ask will be more directed at Emily and Ian, looking at consumers. In particular, I think, Ian, your brand being relatively young, and I suppose from Brown's Dairy, there's a bit of familiarity, household name, a bit of legacy. Now, perhaps going to you first, Emily, how do you find this whole transition in consumers' perceptions as your brand embarks on the sustainable packaging journey?
Okay, I think it's an interesting one. Obviously, with our main supply chain ingredient being dairy, there's a lot of conversation around the sustainability of that. And consumers, I think, sit across a few buckets. There's a big focus on animal welfare. There's the consumers that are really concerned around packaging and plastics. And, our milk, the bulk of it is in plastic packaging. So that's something that we're working through. And consumers have made it very clear, to us, through the retailers, through social media, that we can't just sit and do nothing anymore. I think for us, Nerida showed it beautifully earlier, we are having to work the best way we can for our consumers to display what we're doing. I think previously, probably for any marketeers out there, we've, given an entire side of one of our milk cartons up to explaining around the credentials of our packaging. And that's pretty premium real estate that we've sort of given away from the brand to talk around that packaging journey. And I think it's important that, that's still not enough. We need to be doing more. We get a lot of questions from consumers, how can we return to the old days of the milkman? Can we bring glass bottles back into the supply chain? And I think it's one of those areas where we've always really prided ourselves on being agile, but at the moment we have not been agile enough. We have a 136-year-old supply chain that hasn't quite managed to completely change the way we've been established to suddenly move into a glass milk model. There's definitely things that we're looking at. But I think for me, those small steps, while we're working on those bigger things to meet those consumer needs, what can we be doing in the meantime that means we're constantly moving forward in our packaging?
Thank you, Emily. And of course, before we feast our eyes on feast on what's inside in terms of the contents, we feast our eyes on the packaging. Now,
enough drink, sadly.
Yes, in this case, you'll be drinking, getting to the contents, which is the drink inside.
After the panel.
You'll have a lot of people approaching you after this, Ian.
I won't get that far.
Just sneak one out off the table. I think one of the things about your brand, especially, I think I've seen some of the reactions to a very uncommon packaging for the wine category. Can you share a little bit about some of these reactions and how do you take them on the sustainable packaging journey with you? Perhaps share a little bit of that.
Yeah, they're all good challenges. So we have we're really a new way to talk about wine, which hasn't been a case for a while. So most of the opposition we have when we meet customers is people think that the taste will be affected or it should be bubbly because it's in a can. So we have to sort of educate everyone about the benefits or what it isn't, more to the point. So the practices that we employ are really to take the best quality fruit and to handle in the minimal factions, so low intervention winemaking, which means if we get it right in the vineyard, if we don't have to do anything to it in the can or overly manipulate it, which means there's no other additions which end up having this kind of imbalance at the end and can cause problems. So premium at the start translates through, and we've done that because our philosophy is to under-promise and over-deliver. So we're trying to spearhead and lead a category, build a category. And Emily talked about agility and being small by name and small by nature. That agility allows us to do things that we don't carry a huge multinational behind us. We're two guys that have bootstrapped a company and we go against behemoths in wine. but no one talks about how wine could be sustainable. And in order to build a category, we've got to have the balls to back it up. So if we say we're good and we are premium, we better back it up. So I think the initial opposition from consumers is there because they're kind of told no other messages. They don't know any better. I don't blame them. And if everyone had a wine and can category, I wouldn't be here because we wouldn't have this discussion about it. So we have to win over every customer one at a time by it's not tainted. Wine hasn't been tinny or beer hasn't been tinny as a legacy since the 50s when they were in actually tins. So the technology in liners now and manufacturing technology means that we can mitigate that risk. We can ourselves, so we can make sure that every can gets delivered to customers in the way that we want it. It's an inert environment with no exchange of oxygen, no ingress of air, no light. So we're more of an archive format, really. But that has limitations too. So the liner is pH sensitive for a while, but if you're talking about, low threes, eventually that acid will start to eat away at the liner. So we sort of say, we're a drink now kind of product. Don't cellar us along with Grange, drink it now. You could cellar it with Grange. Yeah, so we do have opposition and that's part of the struggle as a small company is we don't have the big bank balance to be able to educate everyone on this. So this is why I'm pleased to be able to talk about it here and travel internationally to talk about it. So there's significant challenges for us here.
Definitely a conversation starter, I have to say.
Interesting. Sorry,
Go
if
for
I
it,
can just jump in as sort of a counterpoint to the milk in glass bottles discussion. I've actually been working with one of the behemoths in the wine industry because in Europe and Scandinavia in particular, there's a lot of pressure on wine producers to get out of glass because of the greenhouse gas emission issue. So, yeah, I think sometimes we have to be careful about not being in love with the past. And, sometimes we have to guide consumers as well and not just respond to what they're asking us for.
Thanks, David. I think you really touch on an interesting point, which I'd like to, Michael and yourself, to elaborate a little bit on. As suppliers and, developers of sustainable packaging, what are some of your observations and from this whole transition into sustainable packaging? Is there anything particular that you can share in terms of perhaps trends, what the future might look like?
Okay, so 35 years in the packaging industry, and I've learnt more in the last 2 to 3 years than I have in any of those years, because we're evolving at such a rate that we never have before. I mean, everything is. But for me, the mandate in the business, we break it all down to packaging without packaging. So I go back to, and I've trademarked that so nobody can steal it. But all jokes aside, you go back to the APCO hierarchy that Nerida had up before. Let's get rid of it. If we don't need it, let's get rid of it. So when you start to think in that mindset, then it really changes the way that you approach things. So we've spent a lot of our R&D time and money in looking at technology where we can remove that packaging. Then it comes back to, once you come up with that idea, how do you actually take it to marketplace? Because the consumers are calling the shots in a lot of cases, whether we like it or not, and have their opinions on things. And sometimes those consumer opinions are not right. It's not necessarily the best option. So it's very much a challenging space. For us, we've been spending a lot of time, with our knowledge around self-adhesive, but also coating and marking. We're working on a big project at the moment. There's some samples outside that if you care to have a look at. The end game is actually removing the little pesky fruit sticker off the piece of fruit. And we've been able to take a technology that's been used for many years in laser coating and adapt that to be able to be brought into the ability to be able to coat the fresh produce, skin of the fresh produce itself, and just change the outermost pigmented layer of the skin. Great innovation. Once we come up with that innovation, then there's so many stakeholders involved in the process. The retailers, will they accept it? What effect does it have on the product? All those sorts of things. I mean, what does a consumer think? I mean, who likes those fruit labels? I hope I don't see any hands. I really hope I don't see any hands. They're terrible. So it all comes back to the collaboration around those sorts of things and that education piece. That's really challenging for a packaging company that's trying to do something, because all of a sudden you're moving your mindset from an R&D perspective to actually trying to educate the consumers as well. So you have to partner with brands and you have to say, okay, how do we do this together and find those early adopters? I hope I'm answering your question, but this is really the big thing for us. It's about the partnership and the collaboration, and deep collaboration. Collaboration is a word that is used a lot, but it really needs deep collaboration and deep understanding and deep trust to be able to go through those processes.
Thanks, Michael. And what are your thoughts, David?
Yeah, I guess as a packaging manufacturer that focuses on fibre, the big thing for me is that when you kind of read about the history of packaging, we know how important as a form of primary packaging, fibre was in the early part of the 20th century, sort of through to the middle of the century, I guess. And now, most of us grew up and our children are still growing up in a world dominated by plastic in terms of the food and beverage packaging space in particular. And so I share Michael's perspective that really things are changing faster than they've ever changed in my experience as well. And what we're seeing is the re-emergence of fibre in a whole range of functional forms as a primary packaging material. And I find that incredibly exciting, and that's what we're about. And I guess to back that up, it's really for us, in a very isolated part of the world, to stay up to date and have an understanding of what's happening, particularly in Europe and North America, in terms of new technology and new developments that are coming in the fibre space. So, and certainly we're available to discuss those things, not from the point of view of hoping to sell more packaging, but just from the point of view of contributing to the conversation and making sure that we have the right information in front of us as brand owners to make the right or the best decisions about our future packaging.
Thanks, David. Perhaps I think, across the board, we touch a little bit about consumers, and each of you have taken a very different journey. But I think one of the questions perhaps our friends might be interested in, I think along this way, what are some of the challenges or walls that you might have had to break through? Perhaps share some of those experiences if you could. And Emily, would you like to go?
Okay. I think the fact that our journey around packaging specifically started from a compliance point of view. So whilst we spent 130 years, our innovation has been focused on product quality and taste. And then suddenly 6 years ago, APCO decided that we were large enough to be reporting on all of our packaging and our strategies. And we're like, okay, who's APCO? What are the 2025 targets? A lot of people that are in this room that haven't heard of them before, we were definitely on that journey as well. And I think with that came the fear that probably comes from everybody else. Is there an increased cost? What does the assurance look like? How are we going to find the resource to do this? And actually it's kind of gone from a challenge to something that's been really, really positive for us. And to misquote the whole, you can't manage what you can't measure. It was really, really good for us because it really got the packaging onto the map for us. We really had to focus on all aspects of our packaging. We've got around 230 products, so there's a lot of different packaging types across that. And they've all got their own challenges. Some are further along the journey than others. But I think it has been really useful. There's a huge amount of resource, and I feel like I'm probably plugging APCO here, which is not quite the idea. But you talked around collaboration. That collective impact approach, we're not the only dairy processor in Australia. There's others, and we have similar packaging types, and they're all facing similar challenges as well. So really being able to have that open conversation, and I don't know whether any competitors will ever be truly open with each other, but really in this space is the first time I've seen that kind of really open conversation around what our shared challenges are and how we're going to address them as an industry.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because you're talking about these need to be industry solutions. We can't go about this on our own. And the thing that I guess I have heard from both of you is put it on the pack. Tell the consumer that it's there. because they're actually looking for it. And that's a huge amount of real estate, one side of your product dedicated to that message. But that message is obviously resonating, otherwise it wouldn't be there. So that is a really solid way forward for me. I think that is the biggest challenge. We're trying to develop, we're trying to come through with all of these industry solutions, but we've got to tell the consumers what they're doing so that they actually see those steps forward that the industry has already made and continues to make, and should be very bloody proud of what we've done.
So we just have to vocalize it or communicate it in a way that they can actually understand.
Absolutely. And Nerida told me to say that.
Do you know, I think it's interesting because sorry to go twice, but that has probably been our other biggest challenge, and more specifically with the packaging that Nerida showed early, that communicating to customers, consumers, and it's not just customers and consumers, it's around your local MRFs and waste authorities. When we first launched that product, we'd gone through APCO, we'd gone through the prep tool. We knew that, yes, it included, it was made in a renewable way, replaced the petrochemical P layer with a plant-based one. But unfortunately, when we'd first gone to market with it, we kind of went with the name BioBoard. So everybody suddenly thought, bioplastic, okay, cool. So even though it had, the recycle logo on it and gone through that process, the Recycle Right website said every single non-metallized milk carton, apart from the Browns Dairy BioBoard packaging, can go in the recycling. So for us, that was obviously absolutely devastating that we're trying to improve the outcomes. And so for us, it was a massive learning, is really work not just with your consumers and what they see, but with, the waste authority, local government and MRFs, just around making sure that message is really, really clear. Because the worst thing is people, we knew it could be recycled, but conversely for packaging that can't be recycled, and there's a whole wish cycling thing, we need to be really, really clear for those consumers so that they know they're doing the right thing when they want to be.
Thank you. And Ian, what about you?
So I think following on from what the other panellists have said is getting that message out to consumers and letting know that there are options in our industry. And we've sort of taken a two-prong approach to that. So we've gone not as aggressive in a retail space in Australia because we seem to be a bit slower in the uptake, in particular in our industry, but other countries are leading. So we've got 3 export countries, and they're all quite different, with Singapore, Japan and Sweden. But Sweden was the hardest market to enter for us, but a no-brainer because a highly regulated market controlled by the government. So it's like if Dan Murphy's owned, if they were the Swedish entity for liquor and they were also the regulator. So you've got this kind of irony going on where they're saying, don't drink, but hang on, come to our shops to buy. And on the back of that, they've got a massive sustainability agenda. And part of that agenda is Tetra, pouch, bag and box is their biggest consumer product, and cans. So we're currently our Chardonnay is the only Australian wine on the shelves, I think, at the moment. I think Hardy's might have got in there. But so we had to jump through series of hoops which really didn't make it viable, and it's a tender system. So with our industry, we've got to sort of forecast 12 months in advance. And if we tender for this, it's going to take 12 months to win it. But the payoff for us is now we're on the shelf. We can start talking about we are part of their sustainability agenda. So we've got the biggest mouthpiece to talk in Europe, but we have nothing here to talk about it. So we rely on consumers to know that when they buy from us, they're buying a sustainable option. And then domestically, we're in about 65 Betty's Burgers outlets, which is a great value prop for us because we talk about convenience, so one glass and not a bottle kind of thing. So we beat Treasury to that business, and we improve their profitability for the business by 4%, blew out their margins by 250%. All off the back of uneducated staff up to 18 and younger. The younger obviously can't serve booze, but they were pouring and they were wasting and they were slowing their service time down. They were looking for our product, but they just didn't have the quality. So we've been with them for over 12 months, and I think they've generated about $1 million in revenue off our product. So that is an exercise in if you build it, there will be at least one person there. They have been great because they they just get to our target market, which is if you want a burger and a beer, if you want to take a picnic down the beach, or if you want to smuggle it in your bag and put it on the aircraft and have a bit of wine.
You're giving people ideas now.
Yeah, everyone does that actually. Yeah. Internationally, you struggle, but so the problem for us is talking about sustainability and why it's a better option for our consumers. So we're getting there one step at a time.
Thanks, Ian. I think you're right. Like, it's giving them the why. Why should they do this? And
yeah,
that's
it's
value.
that Simon Sinek thing, right? They buy why you do, not what you do. Why? Not because what it is. It's why we do it. Yeah.
Thanks, Ian. And David, do you have any other thoughts?
Yeah, I guess in terms of challenges that we've met along the way, and I don't know if many of you do this, but if you kind of wind back before you made an important decision in your life, whether it's personal or business, and go, well, if I knew then what I know now, what would I do that might be different? I pretty much do most of the same things, but I wouldn't have the expectations that they were going to deliver results in a hurry. So it's really about patience and about playing the long game. If you know that what you're doing is right, and this is kind of a little bit of encouragement for you, Ian, and you can stay in the game, eventually you'll be one of the winners, and that's what we found.
Ahead of your time, mate.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, in spirit of turning the dial, so I think you have had a brief of probably sharing 3 tips of what you would do, or what would you recommend our friends in this room to do walking out of this room. So anyone would like, for any takers, for the brave taker to share your first 3 tips?
We all wrote them down, didn't we? I did. I'm not going to.
I can go while everyone's
Go for it.
I think probably one of the first ones is small steps. If we wait for perfection, you're not going to get there. It'll become overwhelming and there will just be too much. So really every little bit that you can do at a time that's on the journey is going to be an improvement. Mm-hmm. Collaboration, collective impact. Everybody has the issue. Everybody needs to work together. We need to come to the solution together. It's going to be easier. It's going to be more attainable. People have the same challenges. They can share what those are. You can learn from them. And the other one is we've used the sustainable packaging kind of guidelines for all of our new packaging launches. And they are so easy to work with. They make it really, really clear the areas that you should probably be focusing on. And as Nara said, it does give that good balance between sustainable packaging and food waste. So I would really encourage people to have a look at those. And when you are designing the packaging, to kind of have a quick look and think around that process when you do it.
Thanks, Emily.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So my tips are about packaging. So the first one, and it came out, I think it was in the Nestle slide that Narrative put up earlier. One of the changes they made with their paper wraps for confectionery was to assess the packaging in terms of volumetric requirements. And so for me, it's about eliminating headspace. The toilet roll example that came up earlier was a great example as well of just making the product more dense. That's not an option for most of us in food. I guess there's examples of that, though, where concentrates are distributed instead of the fully dilute version. But returning to packaging, I see examples all the time of packs that are 2/3 full, 40% full in some instances. And so that's a packaging waste issue. It's a transport waste and storage and logistics waste issue. And of course, it's a greenhouse gas emitting kind of disaster. So really making the pack the right size for the amount of product that you intend delivering is one of my kind of keynotes. Second one is, we get briefings from customers on barrier and, we want foil in the packaging. Why do you want foil? No real reason. It's always had foil in it. So it's really going back to first principles. This is my product. This is what it's sensitive to. How do I protect the product from the dilatory effects of that, whether it's oxygen or moisture or something else. And then the third thing is when you've designed the packaging according to sustainable packaging guidelines and you've absorbed all of the information that has been available to you over the last couple of days, and you come out with the packaging and you've got the barrier and you know what the packaging needs to do in terms of preserving the food is come back and monitor that. So first of all, in terms of changes in circumstances and environment, what's available, and secondly is the performance of your line, your process, because I see packaging that's the victim of process being out of control. And so all of those great principles that you designed into the packaging have just been thrown in the bin because the equipment's no longer doing what it was intended to do. So pay more attention to that.
Thanks, David.
Oh, me? Okay.
I've got to bring it home.
Look, I'd say that alternative packaging for the wine industry is in its infancy. I think even though we've been innovators, I think we're well overdue for a change in that area. I hope we're part of that conversation. But I'd say consider the impacts of packaging for consumer and their choices. And that's an effective way to bring down your individual CO2 emissions. To give you an example, if we export a pallet of wine, that represents about 800 litres of wine, of which 40 kilograms is packaging. The equivalent in wine bottles is 500 litres and 340 kilograms of packaging. So you get less booze and you get more packaging. So the next time you consider a $5 bottle of New Zealand Sauv Blanc, just think about, or even South American or European wine, just consider how far, given that the bottles had to come from China, go to that country, get filled and then come to you. And just to rub salt in the wound, I can't remember the Australian stat, but only 25% of wine bottle glass gets recycled. The majority of it goes to landfill. And there's a contamination issue with coloured glass, and it takes a huge amount of energy to regenerate. So that's prohibitive if you really, distill it all down. The recent study that came out of California showed that wine packaging, you can reduce your individual CO2 emissions by 80% if you move to can as opposed to glass. And then, the closed loop system. So of all the world's aluminium that's ever been produced, 75% is still in circulation today. So that infinite loop thing is definitely a boxer in our corner. So if you're looking about, what is my individual impact? I think, using alternative, because we all have a glass of wine, but I think people are only just now starting to realise what's their individual impact on that. So, that's it.
Thanks, Ian.
Okay, this is a lot of pressure going on. It was mentioned earlier, and I talked about traceability, but I think so this is my number one, traceability, but more importantly, consumer engagement. The two of them go hand in hand. The tools are here right now, and they can be very, very easily linked to sustainability measures around the packaging materials and the communications thereof, but also the food waste control as well. And actually interacting with a consumer or a B2B channel, but a consumer in a way to reduce that food loss in the home. They're coming, they're here, and I mentioned the whole demystified thing. Traceability is not something that's complicated to roll out in any business. For us, the use of reclosure systems is something that is developing at a rapid rate. It's a place that we've played in for a while. I mean, your milk carton is the ultimate design product that has been around for many years. So that in the flexible packaging space, we can implement a reseal system into a pack that doesn't, or even does have a Ziploc in it now. Do it with less plastics, do it with a better carbon footprint than it's ever been done before, and that is off the shelf. So we can also do that, and it's one of those rare cases where we can actually bring the cost of the packaging down and take those sustainability measures. And going back to what I said before, that packaging without packaging mindset, I think is a really good one. Laser coating, we remove inks. We remove and all of the bad things that go with those inks. Self-adhesive labels and the lineless technology that is growing at a rapid rate. Half of the self-adhesive label goes in the bin as a backing paper, and it's got silicone on it. And look, there's some great initiatives going on with RAFcycle trying to do collections and recycles. They're cumbersome systems. Nothing better than removing them. So that whole packaging without packaging space is a really good one. that goes off into augmented reality, artificial intelligence. The whole active and intelligent packaging space is developing at a rapid rate, and we're going to see some pretty amazing things. And working with technology providers like us and our peers, they can be deployed. It just takes that collaboration and understanding within a business to get them deployed. They're my 3 takeaways.
Thank you very much, Michael. Now, that's a lot of food for thought. And there's never an easy gig to do. Just, we are actually between you and lunch. So we are very mindful of that. But just to summarize some of the key takeaways and to thank our panel, I think one of the things I've heard from them is to converse with your competitors, because all of you are facing very similar challenges, to collaborate with depth, because it has to be an industry-wide solution. Thirdly, to communicate with your consumers. They only know what they know, but perhaps you have to make that clearer. Last but not least, I think what I've also heard from this panel is small changes can lead to large impact. So hopefully that concludes this session. And I would like to also invite all of you to have a bit of a connection and over food and have a bit of a conversation. But before we do that, let's give a round of applause to our panel. Thank you, Emily from Browns, Michael from Result Group, Ian from Small Things Wine, and David from ZipForm. Thank you very much.